How's everybody doing? So I'm going to probably try to get started on the mark. I have quite a lot of information to cover. I lost my clicker today, so I'm going to be kind of sitting over here so I can click through slides. But you know, I'll look out if you guys have questions or other types of things that you'd like to ask. We're going to have a little bit of discussion at the end, and we can kind of talk about anything that you're curious in this presentation. So the title of this presentation is New Tools for Real-Time Decision Making. It's about leveraging technology and trends from the video game industry. And I'll talk a little bit more about why I chose that. I'm going to throw a lot of opinions out there. These are my own opinions. They don't necessarily always going to reflect Autodesk. I'm also going to show you a lot of cases that are really relevant to business. But before I get started, I kind of wanted to get a feel for the audience here. So how many of you have played online games at one point in your life? So you don't have to be shy. You know, it's okay if you played. Okay, so we've got a pretty good familiarity with online games. How many of you guys have worked or are aware of what game engines do or are capable of? Okay, so a few of you. Great. So I'm going to keep this at a high level. I'm going to try to keep this around business, around tools, and so forth. I will go deep in certain places, but I really want you guys to understand the utilities of a lot of these new technologies coming out. This is a disclaimer they asked me to put up. This is just the point that I'm going to throw out opinions, and a lot of these things aren't going to reflect future. So just take a second to look at that. Let that burn into your subconscious. So what I do at Autodesk, just to give you a quick introduction, is I look at emerging technologies and emerging trends. And where those two intersect, I try to draw a dotted line down to our customers. So I'm looking at a lot of adjacent technologies, things that are new, or maybe things that are in different markets and different ways to adopt those into our own customer business markets. One of the things that I'm really keen about looking at, too, is this concept of the positive innovation loop. I know everybody talks about innovation. It's sort of a buzzword these days. I'm not really proud to be using it in my talk. But really what it's about, to me, innovation is about integration. It's about, I call this acronym of PI. It's about understanding a problem and having an idea. An idea isn't really anything. It's really how you execute that idea. It's what you do with it, how you execute it, and how you make it live and how you make it real. So the positive innovation loop is really around sustained exponential trends. These are trends where cost is driven down because of these trends. And I don't know why this slide is on some sort of a timing. Costs are driven down. The technologies get better. They get more sophisticated over time. As a result of that, there's wider spread activity because of the lower cost for investment. And as a result of that, you get this a lot more contributions to different types of innovations that are benefited in a variety of industries. So these are some of the objectives I'd like you guys to all walk away with today. So this is what I'm going to really kind of the core of what my talk's about and where things are going to go. So I'd like you guys to all to understand, you know, what is this concept of gamification, games-based learning, and serious games? And what is real-time interactive 3D? And how can it help you make better decisions, really for your business, but also whoever you work with? And how can game engines and gamification really help create better business decision-making tools? So I'll show you some tools that are leveraging from these types of industries. And then finally, I wanted to show you guys a lot of examples sort of across the breadth of different industries to give you guys some real examples of this stuff. So as a prelude, I wanted to talk a little bit about the evolution of media. Now, I believe, unlike a lot of other technological advances of the past, the Internet and the World Wide Web have created diversity. And this isn't just diversity in the types of services and media that we consume. It's diversity in how we actually participate in that media. And this is around, basically, content today is free, right? So if content is king, context is queen. Context is really what puts everything about content into understanding and to drive you forward so that you know where you're going. So the social media technologies of today have created a demand for fundamentals like authenticity, participation, and engagement. And special effects and funny graphics from the Super Bowl are great, but without context, without understanding, they're just a one-off. So I don't really want to celebrate technology here. I want to show you what you can do with it. What's the tool for it? And if you look at the evolution of media, It all started when we had someone figured out how to write the alphabet, and we had print, radio, and television, and the World Wide Web, and the internet. And each of these have had a significant impact on our lives, on how we do things in our daily and our business lives. In fact, I think a lot of us are spoiled by the innovation that's happening in our personal lives, and we want that big silver bullet or that silver button that can kind of turn on our businesses and make things better. And there is no silver bullet, there is no silver button, but there's a lot of tools that can really help you drive and get there. And I'm not going to go into all the cloud services of Autodesk today. That's not what my talk's about. It's more about games and game engines. But I do want you guys to know that with this evolution of media, with the new trends in social media, Autodesk is really putting a lot of shift into its own business, from going from just a traditional CAD company to a lot of design tools into the cloud, into social media, social networks, and really leveraging a lot of different ways that we can utilize that information. So one of the descriptions I say in my talk is if you want to know what innovation looks like, just look at what's happening in the video games industry. With the advancement of real-time interactive 3D graphics, low-cost, high-powered computer graphics hardware, and new types of input devices, the video games industry is clearly transforming the way that others are adopting these technologies and drive deeper, more meaningful relationships with digital information, and more importantly, the people they collaborate with. So it's about people, and it's about information, and it's about relationships. And in many ways, these technological innovations are ultimately being transformed into rich, immersive, and engaging experiences. It's about an experience. Now, technology on its own, as cool as it is, or no matter how we like it, it's just a facilitator. It's not going to get you there. And really, I want you guys to understand that storytelling and rich narrative, which translates into experience and personal understanding, are the real human drivers behind what is transforming all of these technologies into deeper, more meaningful relationships. So it's really about the power of how you tell a story, how you leverage content, and how you utilize that and utilize technology as a facilitator. Right? It's not about celebrating technology on its own, because that's just coolness. It's not usefulness. So storytelling, stories and narratives have been delivered across media ever since the Cro-Magnon man figured out that mineral pigments and iron oxide and black manganese could be applied to the sides of caves. And a well-told story can captivate, engage, inspire, and motivate us towards new heights of understanding. It can give us the ability to take action around complex concepts that we might otherwise not have come to on our own. That's the engagement factor here. And stories can also help us make better, more informed decisions. Now, I don't want to downplay the whole point of first-person experience, but as you know, if you've ever been told a story before you go into something that's unknown, it gives you a lot more context, a lot more wisdom on how to act, how to behave, and how to respond to those situations. First-hand experience is core, and I think that's one of the core of what games and game engines can do. They can better emulate that first-hand experience through rich stories and narratives. So whether it's chronicling life, communicating with others, or creating an inspirational image, storytelling is the key to unlocking understanding through human experience. And experience happens within our minds. It doesn't happen out there in the world like we would think. It's all in here. And it doesn't happen from the story or the storyteller, no matter how much credit that they get. It's all about how you infer this and how you bring personal meaning into your own experience through your own lens. So many in the film and entertainment industry today use rich digital media. These are some of our customers have done. They'll use things like 3D graphics, animations, and other audiovisual materials to tell a story to help others better visualize complex narratives. Digital media can also provide the creators of the story a means to help their audiences visualize complex concepts which would otherwise be too difficult, impossible, or too costly to achieve with traditional media. So digital storytelling and using digital media to tell a story gives you a lot of benefits. But again, it's all about the story. It's all about how you leverage that content. It's all about what you do with it. So movies like Avatar not only harness technology and digital media to visualize content of the narrative, but they also created an entirely new way of filming and digital storytelling for the director. When James Cameron sat there up on stage with a bunch of people in motion capture suits. Through his lens of his camera, he was looking at virtual characters in real time as they interacted and behaved. And this gave him much better context to what was going on in the story than looking at a bunch of people in orange suits with ping pong balls all over them. Ping pong balls are used for how they capture motion. So it's all about engagement through storytelling. These same technologies have been used for nonfiction storytelling. Everything from that which is life at the nanoscale to giant cities to entire galaxies. Using digital media to tell a story, to engage somebody, to inspire them, to take action, and to understand things so that they can make better, more informed decisions. So we see these, and now due largely to the exponential growth in computing power, we have the ability to interact with rich, immersive 3D content by the way the video games industry in online games. And that's because cost of computing has gotten so low and computers have gotten so sophisticated. I now have in my back pocket more computing power than the entire NASA space station did. I have more connectivity than the President of the United States did to all information just 20 years ago. So we've seen this increasing decline in this media and this connectivity around us. And online games are a great example of a technology that facilitates understanding and experience through rich narrative, but it gives you this in real time. So every week, millions of people, including some of your employees, coworkers, and those you collaborate, spend hours playing video games in highly complex virtual environments, many of which are massive multiplayer online games. And often, they do this with a level of engagement that you won't find when they're at work. So this couple here had their honeymoon photos shot around games. They met online. That's how they got engaged. So, sorry about that. So in the gamer world, we often hear the phrase, put on your game face. And these people look quite crazy if you didn't have the context that they were playing games. But Philip Tolinato did a series called Gamers, and he recorded people's faces while they were playing games. And I think here you can clearly see that these people aren't crazy. If you look deeper, they're highly focused and they're highly immersed in their gameplay. So this is what games can bring, right? How do we make business a game? How do we play games that are real, that make us inspired, right? If you look at a lot of our business software, you'll find they don't quite look or feel the way games feel. But there's a lot of things we can do to leverage that and to leverage some of the key ingredients around that. I'm sure this is a level of engagement that any marketeer would want to attach to their brand. Any business leader would want everybody in the company to get behind a common goal, behind their own epic story, their own narrative of the company. So that's the power of what games can do, what engagement can do, what story can do, combined with technology. And by the way, these games, they're not just adolescent video games, okay? They're rich, immersive, interactive 3D environments. They have narrative quests, compelling dynamic goals and rewards, and even cool avatars. And these games also provide rich metrics and real-time feedback. They give you a score. They give you a feedback loop on performance, right? And this is all based on the players, on their teammates during the game. So this is the Star Wars: The Old Republic. Now, there's a lot going on here. If you look at the graphical user interface, there's all sorts of things. There's scores, there's measurements, there's metrics, both on the player, on the games that they're doing. They're doing chat in real time. They're text messaging in real time. They have to manage resources in order to fulfill a task. So these are all powerful things of the game that you wouldn't otherwise see. You know, if you could take an FPS shooter and just everybody's shooting everybody, right? You're going to get this, an enrichment somehow, but you're not going to get a lot of context. But if you give somebody context of a story and a quest, and then they go into the FPS shooter, there's a whole new level of richness that's engaged around this. And you're getting this all in real time. So as we move from digital storytelling methods of entertainment and film that is usually constrained to the director's lens, right? We only get to see what they filmed after the fact. These games give the player the ability to become their own director in a greater story with a whole bunch of common goals. Here's another screenshot. This is Lord of the Rings Online. Again, similar concepts, similar parts about the game. It's not about the graphical user interface. It's about the ingredients that are inherent to it, right? That allow people to do these things, to make decisions richly, dynamically, right, in real time. So I wanted to bring up a really fantastic article, and I'm going to publish out some handouts after this class with some links that you guys can have to take away. Unfortunately, I don't have that today, but I will get that up online so you can look at it. This was done by IBM's Global Innovation Report 2.0, and in context with Curiosity, and it's called Virtual Worlds, Real Leaders. Online games put the future of business leadership on display. And this is a very fascinating report. It was written a couple years ago. And it's all about, what's next, right? And what's next is a simple question that many businesses spend millions of dollars trying to answer so that they can understand what the business world of the future is going to look like, right? We all want to know what's happening next. A good example to demonstrate this is how this talks about online games, and more specifically, how massive multiplayer online games, or MMORPGs, offer a glimpse at how leaders can develop and operate in environments that are highly distributed, global, hyper-competitive, and virtual. And how these games, hundreds of thousands of players, sometimes millions, interact daily in these highly complex environments. These players self-organize, they develop skills that are capable of recruiting, organizing, motivating, directing large groups of players towards a common goal. And decisions in these games are made quickly with ample but imperfect information. So does that sound familiar to you all? That's what we do in our business jobs, right? So I love this quote. This is from Byron Reeves out of Stanford. He does a lot of psychology around games and also created a company that talks a lot about the benefits. He says, if you want to see what the business, if you want to see what business leadership may look like in 3 to 5 years, just look what's happening in online games. So this is serious stuff. This isn't just something that kids are playing now. This is something that people are adopting or seeing a whole bunch of power to leverage. And why is that, right? Well, I'll give you a quick example about this. There was a 9-year-old girl. She was playing World of Warcraft. There's about 15 other people in the game. One of their main leaders died in the game, right? This girl, all of a sudden, spoke up on a mic. They didn't know who it is. They just know it's a person. And she was able to get all these different people, men, different ages and everything, all together to lead them to win a task. Now, this girl didn't know that she had the ability to be a leader. She didn't know that she had these skills, but it happened so quick. It happened at the speed of the interwebs, right? It was just instantly. They were dynamically interacting and engaging. So this is how we're going to take all of these new generations that are doing this. They're going to move into the new world of business. And these things, they learn fast context switching. These are things that CEOs and executives spend years to learn in these online and games environments. So this isn't a joke. This isn't an adolescent thing. These are real trends that are really, truly powerful that we can adopt, that we can learn from, that we can leverage for our own businesses. And we already kind of know where things are going a little bit about that future, right? So for instance, it's mentioned that most of us already know how business has been increasingly global. Enterprises and work teams are more distributed, they're faster paced, and they're fiercely competitive. And now that more work is continuing to be conducted virtually using technology to bridge previously impassable capabilities, many of us now collaborate across the globe using high-speed bandwidth of the internet, email, software, cloud and platform services. Even services such as voice over IP, instant messaging, and video conferencing have become the norm in a large enterprise business. So instant messaging, online chats, website forums, and voice over IP are just a few of the different communication mediums that are utilized in the course of an online game. And they were probably adopting it long before we adopted it in our businesses. So I wanted to pause for a minute and talk about some key ingredients. What are these key ingredients of online games? What do they do? How do they bring us to these new points? So the first one, like I mentioned before, it's an epic story. It's a powerful narrative. So that's your job as business leaders, to drive those goals, to drive that powerful, epic narrative, to give people unified common goals. Now, they can create macro, micro goals of their own, but it's really about leveraging a common goal that everybody's driving towards. It's about creating quests and challenges, challenges that engage us, things that make us move forward, right, to try to progress, allowing for knowledge of the task at hand. It's about real-time, interactive, 3D, immersive environments, right? These are environments that happen in real time, just like the real world. If I walk up to you, we're talking, we're going back and forth. There's no script there. It's just happening, right? It's all in real time. They've got maps and charts, right? These are things that help us navigate, right? We all use navigation and GPS in our cars to know how to better get somewhere. You know, my dad still uses the Thomas Guide. I think it's hilarious, but you know, it's given us new capabilities. There's real-time performance metrics. There's scoring. There's feedback based on their performance. Again, real-time collaboration tools. So this is things like voice over IP, instant messaging, and virtual body language. You know, in some of these games, even when the player's talking, you can see their mouth moving. They have the ability to make gestures, right? Why? Because 80% of us and what we communicate isn't coming from our voice. It's coming from our body language. And there's resource management utilities, right? This is the ability to access and utilize different resources in various tasks in the game, right? So do your employees have access to resources? Do they have the ability to leverage these resources and a whole breadth of them, right, to achieve different tasks? This is what we do in the business world. We give people those advantages. So what does all of this add up to, right? If you really add all of this up, this gives you the ability to make better, more informed decisions, to be smarter about how you operate in the business world, how you operate even in your own life, right? Because if you can actually, and you know, there's been other studies around just how hand-eye coordination is crazy. You know, what kids are doing in first-person shooters, their brains are moving so fast, and they're moving, you know, with these joysticks, and a lot of them, you know, Kinects or whatever. But this is happening to the point where I took, you know, my cousin out. He'd never shot a gun. I took him out, you know, skeet shooting, and he was like first time. He's like blowing 2 skeets off, and who taught you how to shoot? Oh, I don't. Nobody taught me how to shoot. Well, how did you know how to do this? Oh, I don't know. Maybe I play online games, you know. So it's something that you wouldn't expect, but it's happening to our minds. It's giving our minds better ability to make quicker, more informed decisions. So before I go into gamification, serious games, and game-based learning, which is really, I'll describe in a second, I also want you guys to understand the power of an intelligent computer model. This is what Autodesk provides, right? We have solutions that allow us to create content. We can create content on paper. We can create content on 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, right? We can then add metadata to that information, right? That metadata makes it more easy to query that information, to parse that information, to analyze that information. In fact, design process is just many, many feedback loops, right? You're creating, you're exploring, and you're analyzing, and then you're repeating again and again and again. So rich types of media all combined together, right? You go this from a concept all the way to the end, and you go, oops, you know, I'm a designer. Probably every first time that I try something, I don't get it right. It's never going to be right. It's always going to be an iterative process. And our customers have extremely complex data, right? This is a hospital HVAC, so you know it's not just simple. Projects are getting more complex. So this is why we want to leverage this types of information. They're also combining this complex information, giving it contextualization into the real world, right? By laser scanning, LiDAR, combination things. So the next part, or this last half of my talk, I wanted to show you guys a whole bunch of examples. I wish this thing wouldn't keep timing because it's blowing my... So I want to show you guys a whole bunch of industry-related examples to how people are leveraging. And really, the first thing I want to mention is what really is gamification. So gamification is really the use of game mechanics and game design and techniques in non-game context. There's another term called serious gaming. It's called games-based learning. You can almost think of gamification as games for nonfiction, games for the real world, right? And nonfiction can be just as engaging as fiction. In fact, sometimes more engaging because it's more near and dear to our hearts. So, to give you one example, I think a great example, this was done years ago by Autodesk government. This is an application called iMount. And if you look here at the graphical user interface of this thing, and on the left is a video playing, this is all happening in real time. It's highly accurate data that was aggregated together to help Iraqi soldiers out on the field better navigate through a battlefield situation. Some of the green and red that you saw were lines of sight. That's how you could tell if snipers can see or can't see. They're able to integrate animation. They're actually aggregating text to make it textures from satellite imagery to make it look fuller. It's geo-referenced, right? But if you look here at some of the graphical user interface, they're very similar to what you just saw in those massive multiplayer online role-playing games, right? You've got multiplayer capability. You've got animated objects. You've got a display window that shows you in the game. You've got a map that helps you have context for navigation. You've got GPS positions that shows you in real time where the user is. It shows you scoring, gives you the ability to overlay, show resources, hide and show different layers of information. This is a BIM model that they stuck into this so that they could have even more infrastructure once an Iraqi soldier got into the building, what they could do, right? What wires to cut, where to go in the building. This helps you cognitively and help them more on the battlefield as they were going about their tasks. So this is a whole dynamic emulation, and I think it's one of the best examples that I have, at least in the spirit of those multiplayer online games. It's really combining all of these pieces together. So in education, some of the other things we've done at Autodesk is there's this concept of STEAM, STEM. STEAM, good. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And the United States right now has kind of fallen off on this stuff. So how do you get kids engaged? How do you get people in education facilities more engaged in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics? And the A is for art. And I was from the art world, and then I got engaged. And I remember one of my math teachers said, math is the blueprint for the universe. And I was getting into little games, and that just blew my mind, right? So if there's ways to engage people, this workshop here is a game engine. It was developed with a game engine. Revit content from Revit was brought in to the game engine, and this gives kids the ability to engage with this green cabin design, right? Sustainable design, but how to ideate around it. You can click at the bottom there. There's buttons for construction, for piecing it together, how to refine it, and then at the end they allow you to walk through this in real time. So you get, again, this kind of real-time game interactive mode. There's a whole bunch of this stuff up there on the curriculum website, and it's really cool because kids can interact. They're used to playing games, right? I mean, if parents and teachers and traditional media has made these games the way they wanted to, kids would know it totally sucks because the parents made it, right? You have to make it more engaging. And that's no offense. I mean, I'm a parent myself. I know that my daughter, when she's 2 or 18, we're going to have a lot of differences. So you can't try to engage people at the same level that you're at now. You have to engage them at the level that they're at and move them forward. So another, I think, a highly cool and an amazing example of gamification. I don't know how many of you guys have heard about this. This is a little bit older news, but this game Fold It is about protein folding. It's about how to create proteins to solve different problems. This game allowed a bunch of gamers to solve an HIV riddle, an enzyme folding riddle, within 3 weeks. That entire scientific community was working on for 20 years and couldn't solve, right? So not only are we seeing disruptions in technologies, we're seeing disruptions in specialization, right? In fact, specialization is probably going to go away. You're going to see things at the pivot of specialization, right? What do we really want in the business world, in the work world? We want people who know how to think, who know how to dynamically interact and learn, right? How to lead. We don't want someone who can regurgitate a bunch of textbook material because that's not going to get you beneficial qualities in business in the real world. I checked this game out. It was really cool. In fact, had no idea when I went in how to play it. I thought, oh, if they can solve a puzzle, maybe I can. And so I went in there, and I found really quickly, I had no idea what I was doing, but what it gave me was this ability to give me learning. It had little arrows that pointed to show me how to shake the proteins. There was people actually online at that time. It was like 11:30 at night because that's all the time I had to look at it. But and I was asking questions, and people were answering in real time. I was like, wow, this is really amazing. This is cool. I'm learning stuff just by playing this game. And this game is it has scores, right? It rates people, and it creates puzzles for other problems to solve, right? So it's creating narrative, it's creating challenges, it's creating quests for people in the scientific world, probably that a lot of scientists, couldn't otherwise understand. So another thing I want to talk about in games, and really what we see in games, is people. We see people or avatars, right? Virtual comparisons of themselves. But when we design stuff in a CAD program or in a design program, you don't see people, and you're not simulating the built environment as if it's operating, right? So human-centered product design and engineering that's this concept where it gives you these other attributes that you wouldn't otherwise have. And those attributes are things like human factors, right? Ergonomics. If I have a factory, I want to understand before I build the factory even how people are going to have issues or not if they're working in a factory, right? Things like systems integrations, right? How do all these things, if I'm building a hospital and I'm building an operating room and an ER room, and I want to understand how many steps it takes to go from the OR to the ER, right? And I want to understand how that people interact based on how I place equipment in there, right? You don't get that in your design software, in your CAD program. So this is additional types of information around humans, and it can go on and on. Now, Autodesk, again, has been, games and stuff have used humans. So we've taken a lot of what's happening in our media and entertainment software, and we've brought that into sort of architecture. So this is a project called Project Geppetto that came out on Labs, and this was really about the ability to create people, to take a building, take a project, put them in a scene, and watch how they interact. And this has artificial intelligence. In fact, the same artificial intelligence in this is in a lot of the video games we see. So, people don't bump into each other, they navigate around each other, they interact, they immerse. This helps you understand maybe even how people perhaps will congregate. One of the guys in our research, they stuck a bunch of these models in a Revit model and let them just kind of run around for a while, and they all got stuck in this one place, and they couldn't figure out why. And then all of a sudden they came a little closer, and they looked, and they noticed there was a gap between the floor and one of the ceilings on the thing. So they were getting stuck because there was a gap that they just missed. They didn't know it was there, right? So this is how you can infer and understand different things, right? And I talked a little bit about, simulating the built environment as if it's operating, right? So this is about breathing life into CAD. So we often have CAD formats, CAD files, right? And I just want you guys to really understand, so you don't go back to all your employees. You got to put all your CAD into a game engine, and I want you to understand a fundamental difference between, it's not easy. Okay, it's not democratized fully yet. The difference between someone who's a CAD engineer who built designed an oil pier, and a game person is, if you're building in CAD, you want as much detail as you can. So a CAD engineer or a designer, they're going to put, for instance, every bolt and screw and nut in 3D, and that's what they should be doing, right? Because they want that level of detail. They're going to have this really, really rich, crazy model, right? Like a hospital or even a railing, right? But if you take that data and you stick it inside of a game, it's going to suck. I mean, you're going to chunk. It's going to be like 0 frame rates, right? Now, game designers understand this, right? And they understand how to optimize this content. So what they're doing often is they're optimizing it so that it looks real. I mean, a lot of our customers come and say, why doesn't your software, this is years ago, we've done a lot with our software, why doesn't your software look like a game, right? Well, now we're working on that to make the rendering and the visualization better, but it's also because you have to optimize things to make it look good. If you have a railing and with all these things in a game, it's just a plane with a texture, right? But it looks about the same. So my point here is there's a lot of cheating going on. So before I kind of get into these other examples, I don't want you to get super excited and just think it's like a click of a button to go leverage CAD into the game world. It's hard, but we're also working on democratizing this. Our media and entertainment software has the capabilities to optimize, to decimate meshes, which is where you take a lot of really high resolution mesh and you optimize it, right? Like a JPEG, how it's optimized for the web versus a giant TIFF that you would print out 8 feet wide, right? So simulating the built environment, breathing life into CAD, right? There's this oil rig, right? If you had it alone in a game or in CAD software, you're not going to see things like explosions, like lights, like sound, right? Like all the things that we understand and we get in the real world. We get this immersive capability. I mean, imagine if you plugged your ears and you didn't get all of these attributes and you just walked around in this barren world with no people. How much would you understand from it? How much would you get out of it? So it's really about breathing extra life into CAD so that you can infer things, you can understand things as if they're built and operating. And that helps us make better decisions when we're doing design. So a lot of people are starting to leverage this in the CAD world. And one example, I think is a great example, is Doha, Qatar. This is an Autodesk transportation simulator that we did. This is 100% Autodesk modeling with our BIM for infrastructure software that was used to do this, and it's driving the accuracy and extensibility from planning through operation and management. They use this. Parsons Brinkerhoff did this. They created a map for this in Unreal Development Kit. They brought all this data in to create a driving simulator, really to give people the ability to drive around inside the city and see how it was to operate inside of the city. Now, what does that also do? That gets people behind your design before it happens. Did he swerve a little bit? I missed that. But, oh, okay. So these are simulators, right? So they're adding like cave systems. They're adding new types of game controls. These are things that you'd find in a game now that they're bringing into the CAD world, and they'll get people that are city planners behind a design before it happens. This is the Doha city at night. I captured this myself. This is just an executable game, and you can fly through it in real time like this. You can get down on the streets. You can look up into the buildings, fly around. So you can also just get different perspectives that you could never get in real life, but as visually rich as you could in real life. So this gives you better context, right, to the content. It gives you better ability to understand and make better, more informed decisions just by interacting with this stuff in real time. The other thing is, you can't see it here, but I'm just clicking to zoom to things, right? So, if you're in a CAD software, if you ever try, it's complexity, and it's supposed to be that way because you want accuracy. But as we move things down the line, you want to make it easy for people to quickly get and access information. In a game, you have this concept of a W, A, S, and D key, which is basically what gamers use, and they have a mouse. They go like this, and they move that to look around, and then they use the W, A, S, D keys to move forward, backwards, left, and right. And you don't see that in a lot of traditional CAD software, right? But we're actually adopting it now. Autodesk Showcase has the ability to use those keys, which is part of our suite software. It's a real-time sort of visualization software. You can take CAD data, bring it in, and kind of explore. This is a project we did with Nike. This is a virtual foot simulator. This was about understanding how the foot behaves and interacts. And this is all real time. I mean, this is a video I'm showing you. But this is where you can actually walk around and, or not walk around, but move around this foot. Look at it in different juxtapositions, different proning, right? Different splays of the toes, with the shoes, without the shoes, with skin, without bones, without muscle, to really cycle through this and understand how the foot's going to perform when it interacts with the shoe. Right? Again, you start with a shoe, but then you end up with a foot. Again, there's people using all of the stuff that we designed. So we have to have better context, better information, and better understanding around those things we create. And that's, again, where games can take us if we use them properly. Now, I talked about control within games, right? Easy 3-dimensional control. So I'm going to give you some examples of that. These guys here, Comers, they're from Austria. They're actually going to be on the exhibit floor. They have these mixed reality interfaces. I saw them at SIGGRAPH one year, and they were doing this for automotive design and thought, wow, what if you could do this with a big, giant BIM model? So we worked to integrate an ability to take tangible objects and use those to cognitively navigate this massive immersive BIM model to do things like walk through it, to understand things like collision detection, clash detection, all these other things. And this is all in Navisworks. Navisworks is handles all sorts of CAD, multiple CAD data. You aggregate it all together, but it's not, my mom or a stakeholder in one of my designs couldn't just pick it up and use it. But now they can, right? So now they can because they've got this tangible objects. Now, a lot of this concept is adopted from games, right? We've all played in sandboxes as kids, so we have this cognition around objects, and if we can take that and emulate that and push that into the screen, we have a better understanding of how to operate and everything from four-dimensional design, so you can take this little thing and slide it along and look at week by week as the building's being built up. Again, you're not going to get this, again, if you don't build your models rich, if you don't build your information rich, right? The reason you can do 4D inside of Navisworks is because, well, there's a project schedule attached to metadata and intelligent objects, and when you combine all that together, that's how you can see how the buildup goes. Clash detection, right? Collision detection. Now, by the way, this is a very sophisticated looking table, but it's also Reg Prentice from Gensler at one point gave us this idea where he saw this when we had these light tables. He said, well, what if you could use this plan set, like just normal plans, and you could roll that out and use a camera up above, right? The table actually has a camera underneath, and it sees these little markers, and as you move the marker, it sort of is a proxy to move the objects. But in this case, so we tried this, and Commerz has now a whole bunch of different form factors. So now you can just lay out a plan set, throw down different marker chips. This is integrated with Autodesk Showcase to show things like retail configurations around paint and whatever. And I'm not going to go through the whole video, but you get the point, right? I can put something down, I can move it through a plan set, and you can see this up in 3D. And we also wanted to put this on job sites because contractors know 2D plan sets, right? But they don't know 3D. So you could integrate this stuff in a lot of ways. All right. So I wanted to talk next a little bit about input devices, right? I mentioned about video games, about the context, but what about these new input devices? I think we've all seen the Kinect, right? Or how many of you are familiar with the Xbox Kinect? Wow, a lot of people. I have a hunch that wasn't just because of the Xbox. I have a hunch it was also because of the crowdsourced community doing cool stuff. But what did the Kinect do to us, right? It changed the way we thought about gamers, right? We thought about gamers as these lethargic, interactive people, and all of a sudden you've got people playing Kinect. They're social, they're having fun, they're super active, right? They're not isolated, they're social, right? So, and my friends used to joke when that first came out, you're going to see these ripped, buff kids walking around, that guy must play video games. So, and in fact, they've got exercise, games now for the Kinect. So there's gaming, they're gamifying exercising, they're making it more engaging to exercise. Now, the Kinect also did something really interesting where you had this whole grassroots community of people just hacking the Kinect. Adafruit came out and said $1,000 to anyone who can, integrate the Kinect with a computer, and I don't think Microsoft liked it much, and then they upped the stakes to $3,000, and a week later, they reverse engineered a driver for the Kinect for the computer, and whether or not that was right, the whole point was that this whole crowdsource, this whole open source community created all these different types of applications and ways of utilizing a Kinect for things that probably, perhaps Microsoft or nobody had ever thought of. So things like controlling bipedal robots, autonomous quadricopters, 3D scanning, augmented reality where they can track things in 3D. So there's this whole community. It gave us a whole bunch of different potential applications for utilizing a Kinect. Things like HCI, robotics, education, surveillance, motion capture, 3D scanning, object recognition, right? Imagine if you could walk onto a job site and have robots recognize objects and perform with those. So a whole bunch of things. I wanted to show you this video. This was done as a retail kiosk for trying on clothes, right? So now you can go up there and, try on clothes and use your body to kind of cycle through, things. And this was a crude kind of interesting example. It's kind of goofy, but I can tell you these will probably eventually be, on our computers, and I can tell you also my wife will probably spend a ton of money now trying on clothes at home because she'll feel much better about that. And, so giving people this engagement, but then giving this ability to do things useful with it was also something of interest there. And these were also in totally different areas than games. So I took some liberty to hack around with the Kinect in our own products, right? So to try things now, the first thing I did was this thing with 3D Studio Max where you could just kind of do all sorts of granular design like Minority Report, and I found out I got really tired. I just don't see people doing this all day long, But what I did find is that, there are simple gestures like pan, zoom, orbit, right? Simple things that you can do to utilize a Kinect to, engage somebody, but also make it more useful for someone who doesn't know how. So these are just different gestures I made up. This isn't an application. This was just a kind of hack to try different ways of integrating with our own software using game input controls. So the other thing we just recently did, and we're going to have this on the floor, is we took a Kinect and we wanted to use it for 3D scanning. We said, well, what if you could scan an object, much like a laser scanner, but it's a $150 scanner, and let's make it high resolution. And so here is one of my engineers here was scanned himself now in 3D. It took a couple seconds, right? Over here we have a car, which is a Mercedes biome in our gallery. We're just trying different examples of scanning things. The whole point of doing this, though, wasn't just to get a 3D mesh with texture, but also to simulate it. So now we can scan myself or scan some object and understand fluid dynamics. Now this is Project Falcon, which is a real-time simulation, right? Real-time wind simulator, wind tunnel feedback, to be able to do things inside of like a game, right? So this is yet another way to, hack around and utilize stuff coming from a game industry to create these 3D objects to, scan them, to look at the performance of them, right? Or maybe to use them in the real world, A lot of things that are out there in the real world, we don't all have 3D models for, so we want to be able to capture those quick. Laser scanners, LiDAR, and photogrammetry, we've got 1-2-3D catch, all allow for that capability, but they're more costly or they take time. So we wanted to try something that's a little bit more instantaneous. So I want to talk about the evolution of hardware. I think, everybody has these devices, and what we don't, I think some of us, actually I sit at the ferry building and I wait, and I see most people like cursing at their devices like they hate it, and there's a comedian who said, the future is amazing and nobody likes it. But what's really amazing to me is that this thing has a computer, it has a phone, it has a camera, it has text messaging, it connects to the internet, right? That connects us to the world. We're mobilized now, right? We're distributed. We can do anything. I can get information instantaneously on a device, right? We're still unhappy with it, and hopefully you guys will appreciate it more. But the point being here is now that technology is moving along all these trajectories, right? Because of Moore's law, because of these sustained exponential trends, you have this ability now to go from desktop to untethered, or to take CAD data and repurpose it. Right? So here's a tractor that was designed in Autodesk Inventor, and by the way, we have a ton of applications for both Android and for iOS. We have this application for iOS and Android is called Inventor Publisher. This allows you to take data from CAD systems like Inventor and now show how it is assembled, right? And then publish 3D instructions in animated onto a tablet, so that some engineer who needs to service this device can, instead of look at a big tome of a book of information, they can just look at the device, hit play, and have this immersive interaction around how to assemble this object. This is BIM 360 Glue Mobile. This is, now again, when I was saying, you can't take games and you can't take really complex CAD data and just push it into a game engine. Well, this is almost like a game engine. It's not a game engine. It's BIM 360 Mobile Glue, but you can take massive now models, stream them down from the cloud, and interact with them much like a joystick in a game, right? You get this real time. So we're adopting a lot of these things in games and even at Autodesk, right? And into mobile technology. There's real-time interactive 3D experiences, right, from mobile devices. This is the Bay Bridge Explorer. The San Francisco Bay Bridge is a massive project for infrastructure. What they did is they took a lot of that CAD data, pushed it into game engines, and this was to get the entire community behind it, right, to have people understand what it's like to drive across the Bay Bridge when it's finished. So that went from a transportation simulator that was huge, that was expensive, right, to this mobile iOS app that you can get called Bay Bridge Explorer, and you can just drive around now on a mobile device, and you get this rich, immersive, very visual 3D experience, right? So these things are translating from desktop computers and high-performing computers now to mobile devices. This is an example from a TAMCO. They used a game engine basically to create a factory environment. This is where you can walk through and walk around in the factory, and I'll basically give you, it's a 33,000 square foot factory, and it gives you your positioning there. And they can walk around and basically walk up to different equipment, and then they can click on that, and then they can see how that equipment is performing in real time. So this equipment has sensors attached to it, right? We have sensors, we have all of this other information out there in the world, or all of this data capturing information that they can leverage now to see real-time performance, but also engage that within a game environment so that you can immerse yourself in the factory and quickly get from place to place to see how the stuff's performing. Predictive analysis. This is where you can infer things that you never could before. So I want to give you one quick example of this. This is by Virginia Tech's RAMAC, the Real-Time and Automated Monitoring Control Lab. And what they did is, and I'm going to scrub through this quick because I'm about 9 minutes before lunchtime. So what they did is basically they took a BIM model, a 4D BIM model in the cloud, and then they walked around on a job site, took pictures using photogrammetry, which is similar to our 1-2-3D catch technology, to create a point cloud of the actual job site. And then they used artificial intelligence and machine learning to compare what was on the job site with what was in the cloud as a 4D BIM model. And then this gave them the ability to actually predict what was on schedule and off schedule. They could highlight things in the real world and give that contextualization to what was on schedule and what was off schedule. So I'm sure you can see a lot of uses for stuff like that in your own jobs, right? And they're leveraging rich, complex CAD information. They're comparing it with stuff in the cloud, with artificial intelligence, game types of technologies, and things that give you performance feedback. So I'm going to sum it up now. I wanted to talk a little about something I'm pretty excited about, which is I think is going to revolutionize things. It's the next new normal. How many guys are familiar with the term augmented reality? Wow, everybody. So augmented reality, just to define it, just in case there's a misconception, it's really about augmenting semantically in context information in real time into the real world, right? In alternate reality games, the concept of an ARG is much like multiplayer online role-playing games, but it's out in the world. So what happens when you combine augmented reality with stuff like World of Warcraft? Now you're walking around in the world, you're engaging, you're seeing information and performance data right on top of the real world. Remember that game I showed you where the kids were moving all around and they had the map? Imagine that's in the real world. So this article from Gizmodo basically talks about Google, a game called Ingress, which is coming out, and I believe it's available for Android, and it allows you to walk out in the world, and it's about different players who, it's sort of a sci-fi game, but again, I'm sure you could see if you translated that purpose into business, how you can engage people in the field, right? How they work and give them more contextualization, break the glass of the flat screen and give them 3D information out there in the world. So the last thing I want to show you is a video, and it's a quick clip from a video called Sight. And this is combining all of this information, right? Augmented reality, contextualized performance feedback. This guy's walking into his refrigerator. It's telling him information about the ingredients for something he wants to cook. It's tracking him. It's tracking different objects. He needs to cut some cucumbers. He has the ability to get this, to cut this information. So, you can see where this is going. You can see how this could become a big utility for our lives. We might spend too much time cutting cucumbers then again, I don't know. But the whole point being, there's a lot of interesting value for this. Yeah, and of course, hopefully you're not going to waste the cucumber. But I think you get the point. There's a lot of potential in where this is going to go. Frying an egg. Yeah. But what's it about? It's about making kind of mundane, boring things fun again, right? And if you can do that in the business world, if you can make the mundane, the boring, fun in the business world, then you've got engaged employees. And if you've got them all engaged around your common epic goal of your business, that's a big thing. We all talk about changing behavior in the business place. We all talk about changing culture. I think some of you have hopefully seen ways that you can utilize this stuff coming from the game industry. So in summary, hopefully you've got some of these objectives. Hopefully you understand some of these concepts and where they're taking things and where you can go. Hopefully you understand some of the key ingredients of games and gamification and how to translate that into your business. Thank you very much.